Hansen, also known as LivDev, and I'm here to provide my opinion on four cards that have been revealed, at least the last four cards that have been revealed before we get the big spoiler reveal stream and the spoiler season will start within next week, which I'm still trying to figure out a schedule how to cover all the cards then, because, busy work schedule and all that stuff, but I'll try to find a workaround and try to update the videos as soon as I can and such. Nevertheless, let's talk about these four cards because there's actually some pretty interesting ones and some ridiculous ones. The first one that kind of is interesting in quotation marks is Reform Scheme, a Warlock card, so we're going to review Warlock cards while we talk about this card. Reform Scheme. So, what is Reform's grand plan? Apparently summoning imps. So, Reform Scheme is a free mana card that says, summon a 1/1 imp. And before people get cheeky when reading this card, no, it's not going to be when it upgrades, it summons two 2/2 imps, free imps. No. It summoned one 1/1 imp, then summon two 1/1 imps, then summon free 1/1 imps, etc., etc., etc. Okay, let's just get this out of the way. If we go by the metric that I've been judging these cards by, where it's if this card is bad to top deck, this is by far the worst card to top deck of all the schemes that we've reviewed. I mean, seriously, playing free mana for a 1/1 demon is abysmal. I mean, I'm sorry if it sounds harsh, but let's be frank. I would rather get two 2/2s. Or heck, I would rather get a Felguard. Or even just get this without it being buffed than actually getting a free mana 1/1. Let's just, heck, even Reckless Diatrol. I would rather discard the lowest card cost in my hand than summon a free mana 1/1 demon. Let's just get that out of the way. So, there is very, 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 very rare circumstances where you're going to play this scheme. Like, the rare circumstances where I see you actually wanting to play the scheme at its base is like if the opponent's at 1 health and you need to finish them, but you're already attacked with your minions, and you have, say, a Knife Juggler out, and then, oh, I play Reform Scheme, and then I summon the 1/1 demon and deal 1 damage. Yes, I deal the lethal. Woo! Probably going to be some random Trollden video eventually if I have to make a guess. Now, as much as I'm kinda giving it pretty much a lot of flack, I think is the term, on the card at its base level, upgraded, it's alright. Now, one thing that people don't remember who haven't played the game for a while or such, or who maybe have not played Hearthstone at its beginning, there was arguments to make kind of like a Zoo Warlock deck that is very token-based synergies. Like, for example, okay, let me get the 2-drops off. There was just stuff like where you flood the board with a bunch of 1-drops, and then you have token generators like Implosion and such. And then you have like little payoffs with when you have your tokens die, like maybe you benefit, say, like there was a time that, if my recollection is correct, and I could be wrong, there was a time where this was a really popular card in Zoo Warlock, just because you could just trade into your imps, get card draw, and such. Seriously, there was a time where that was a thing. And I think the one benefit of the doubt that I'm going to give to Reform Scheme, if, and I'm saying if, a Zoo Warlock that focuses more on the token-based synergies can exist, then it might work. And to give it the benefit of the doubt, we do actually have a lot of payoffs for token-centric decks. We have stuff like Spirit of Bat, where when our tokens die, hey, we get a +1/+1 boost. We have stuff like other token generations, such as, for example, I mean, if we go into a discard strategy, you could just make an argument that High Priest Jeklik is just a token that constantly adds to your hand, but that's kind of semantics on that one. But we have stuff like Phoenix Circle, and we even have stuff like, let's see, in the Witchwood, if my recollection is correct, Duskbat. We have ways to summon a bunch of token-based creatures, and we even, like I said before, do have payoffs, like maybe you buff up your demons and then play Electromancy. You could also say, use Blood Troll Sapple as a finisher. Like, that can actually be a good way to deal damage. Heck, maybe you can use the Spirit of the Bat to do a bunch of buffs for Harik the Bat. And even one of the more common payoffs that people always underestimate, and keep in mind, we might need to keep an eye on Shaman spells, including that scheme, even though, like I said, you know my opinion on the scheme. We have stuff like Witch's Cauldron as also a payoff as well. So, going back to Rafam's scheme, if we can hold on this and just as a finisher to get a bunch of tokens to help with these payoff kind of cards for token-based synergy decks, that's actually something to consider. Like I said, I still don't think the card's great, which is why I'm going to give it the rating of not that great. Though I was really, really tempted to say bad, especially just by the metric of is it bad the top deck. But I do think there is some methodology to actually make a zoo token lock kind of deck. And there's enough kind of like tools and synergies that at least you can toy with it and actually, I think, get some benefit out of it. I think we still need to see a little bit more tools, more more like payoffs, more ways to buff tokens and such, besides the Grim Rally. We just have to wait and see. I could be wrong, though. It is, though, one of those more peculiar cards they revealed so far. I'll just say that right off the bat. Next up, we're going to actually go to Warrior for this one, and it is Improved Morale. Now, I'm going to do a little alteration to the grammar here, because I do think the grammar was a tiny bit off on this. But it's 1 mana, deal a spell, deal 1 damage to a minion. If it survives, add a lackey to your hand. So this is one of the second cards of the quote-unquote lackey mechanic that we're getting from the set. Now, for those who don't know, essentially what it does is lackeys are basically, I showed in the previous video, but they're basically what amounts to 1 mana 1/1s that have significant battle cries that are very powerful, and many people are making the argument that it's like a 2 mana card for 1 mana. So, if you look at it this way, it's a decent card, I would say. The catch-22 is, and let me check because I actually have this in the notes, so let me actually get my notes out real quick on this if you don't mind. Let's see. Because this one, it was one of the weird cards that I had some specific notes I wanted to keep on. So, let me put it like this. The card, when you look at it at first glance, seems pretty average. The card's power level, though, just slightly increases the factor that you do get the lackey in hand. Now, many people are making the comparison argument, and I have to go into Wild to show this off, or just go to the Whisper of the Old Gods for this one. Crafting, Warrior. Many people are trying to compare it to Blood to Ichor, which there's some people who made the argument that Blood to Ichor is a lot better compared to this card, mostly because this card's seen play in Temple Warrior decks, and the factor that what essentially amounted to a free 2/2 was a lot more significant than, say, get a 1-cost card in your hand. And I agree with that argument to an extent. There is one teeny little rebuttal that I am going to slightly make, and it's to make the factor that, well, sometimes in some archetypes like Control Warrior, adding a card into your hand might actually be a good idea, because we still have stuff that makes hand matter like cards in the meta. I mean, for Pete's sakes, I think you're going to still, especially with the post-rotation of people trying to find cards to play, this card is still going to be a relevant card. And they're going to Warrior's going to keep their eye on both control cards and cards to add cards into their hand. So just the factor of that alone, I think the card is a tempting offer. Plus, it also has little synergies in Control Warrior / with Execute, like Slam does. Like, this is what pretty much amounts to. It's a miniature Slam. Except we know that the cards are not going to be a card from a deck, but 5 cards that range in value depending on who you ask, but most people have agreed that it's about a 2-drop card, or 2-cost card for 1 mana. So, I just think by the power level of the lackeys in general, I think it's a good card to play with in, like, Control Warrior, or even another Warrior archetype you can consider is the Enrage Warrior archetypes. Like, there's stuff like Black House Gunspire, the stuff they show in the video, like Gromach Hellscream, but there's even like little stuff, like for example, the classic pain-centric cards that we can think of right off the bat. Frothing Berserker. I mean, there's one other one. I think it's a... Oh, no, it's a normal card, like Gorobashi Berserker. Thank you. Okay, that was a brain fart there for a minute. There's just, like, you could also humor the pain-centric warrior that is still a fine archetype. It's not great because we don't have stuff like Grim Patron. Well, at the very least, we don't have a Grim Patron that is really, really good in Standard, at the very least. But still, it is an archetype to at least humor, at the very least. So, with that, I'll say the card is good. I think Warriors will test the card out because the lackeys are kind of the cool new mechanic. And they might actually test it to see within the deck archetype they're playing within the Warrior deck design to see if it works. If it doesn't, they're going to toss it out faster and say Timbuktu and a Bayou. But I do think this is a safe card to experiment with, at the very least. Now from a card that I think Warrior will at least test, to a card that I know Warrior will play without a sweat, no sweat about it, I would be surprised if they didn't. Omega Devastator. A 4-mana 4/5 that has the battle cry, if you have 10 mana crystals, deal 10 damage to a minion. So, obviously, this is Dr. Boom's callback card. And honestly, this card is a really great callback card, for a few reasons. First of all, it does reference the Omega mechanic, which was a mechanic within the Boomsday project, but also within the art. For people who don't know the story of this, originally, and actually I think I'd better just get the card out, this was originally the card out for Omega Defender. But what happened was, many people were complaining that Omega Defender wasn't a mech, even though it kind of looks like a mech there, even though, honestly, it just looks like a guy in a giant robot suit. But honestly, I think it's some people that wanted the Omega Defender to be a mech for mech-based synergies with Magnetize and such, and some people just thought it would be overpowered. There was a lot of arguments, so they compromised and actually got a new art for Omega Defender, which, granted, was actually a pretty cool art, and now it emphasizes, hey, somebody's in a suit, so it's not a mech. But still, Jim Nelson did pretty good on the art on this one, so it's really nice. So, back to that, it's just funny that with this card, they brought back the old card from the Omega Defender to actually put it on this new card, Omega Devastator, and they now made it a mech for the people who were originally complaining that, hey, it wasn't a mech. So, it's kind of a really, really funny inside joke. Actually, it's really, really hilarious. At least I find humor in it, personally. Anyway, besides the story of all that, mechanically, this card is really, really powerful. A Yeti that is a mech, I mean, yeah, Yeti stats for a 4-drop, people will play a 4-mana 4/5 when needed to. And, like, I can still remember the days in Goblins vs. Gnomes where everybody played Mechanical Yeti. Yes, you got a spare part from it, actually. Let's go and just show what I'm talking about here. There we go. Craft it. There we go. Yeah, there was a time where people played this card consistently. Now, mostly it was because it was a mech and there was a lot of mech-based synergies, but also the factor that it was a 4-mana 4/5. Those are really decent stats for 4-drops. I mean, to put it into comparison, the 4-drops that we have today are generally just like, well, there are people who are willing to play Coppertail Imposter, not only because of the stealth, but just the fact that it's a really big buff mech within this mid-range so that they can actually buff it with Magnetize next turn, whether it's with Auxiliads, etc. But as you can tell, a majority of 4-stat minions, with the exception of a few and the exception of this card, a majority of 4-stat minions that people play in the meta don't really have the stats. And the fact that this stats are on a mech in Warrior is really, really significant. For example, if you have, say, Dr. Boom out, or, well, let's go back to Warrior to show what I'm talking about. If you have the Dr. Boom Mad Genius Hero card out, and do the random hero power Discover a Mech, you can discover this, and then late game, play this on turn 10, not only give it rush thanks to Dr. Boom, but also the fact that it deals 10 damage to the most problematic minion that's on the other side of the battlefield. Also, if it's relevant, you can also deal damage to your own minions if you have... I don't know if there's ever going to be a time where you want to deal 10 damage to your own minion, but hey, it happens. But also, there's just stuff like also, say, Omega Assembly, so you can discover it from that. And even if we don't talk about this, I think the fact that it's a 4-mana 4/5 mech minion in Warrior, it also can just synergize something well with, say, the one common mech that everybody plays, our own friend Zilliats. Because think about it. Sure, we don't mind playing a 4-mana 4/5 on turn 4. Now think about it. If you have Zilliats in hand, and then magnetize the Devastator, you're getting essentially a 7/7 with Divine Shield, Taunt, Lifesteal, and Rush. That is a tempo swing. That is a significant tempo swing. I mean, heck, even if you could play it in decks with War Gear and then just make it a 9/10 with nothing, but still big stats. With that, I just think this card will see play. It will see play in the Control Warrior decks, I think, because either they're just going to discover it from Dr. Boom and it'll just be played for that. But I think there's even an argument just to place it in your deck just with the tempo swings of the 5-cost mechs that we have to just synergize with Magnetic. Just with those interactions alone, the card, I originally gave the rating of good, but the more I think about it, and the more I see these subtle interactions, and just the fact of how good of a tempo it is late game, and how good of it is just being a decent drop on turn 4 in general, I think I'm going to give the card amazing. I think this card is a card that Warrior will heavily appreciate within the rotation. I think the card will see a lot of play, and I think it'll definitely be a top arena pick, and I think many people are going to be salty when they get their biggest threat removed by this card. Just saying. Though, amazing card. Next up, and the last card, I think, before we end this little short video, Madame Lazul. It is the Priest Legendary, and it's, well, one of the main League bad guys in the League of Evil, I think is what they called them, which I think they have an apostrophe, like, as for what, we don't know. It's probably going to be a joke in one of the story articles if I have to make a guess. But anyway, Madame Lazul. As we know, this is the fortune teller for the Whisper of the Old Gods. She's a 3-mana 3/2, and she has the battle cry to discover a copy of a card in your opponent's hand. Okay, one thing to keep in mind. This card's main strength, in all honesty, is just its practicality. It's a card that replaces itself, as well as give information about your opponent's game plan. There is also the cute potential of sabotaging the opponent's game plan with their own schemes. Also, fun thing to note, the cards you can discover, if they are upgradable cards, you will discover the card that it is upgraded. So let's say your opponent was holding on a really big hack of a scheme to board wipe a problematic board, and they have a board presence. Hey, you can discover that hack of a scheme and then use it against them, which is hilarious, may I add. So, yeah, but honestly, that's the usual for real for people who play Thief Priest decks in general. I know a friend who I constantly play with who plays Thief Priest, like, it seems like every time a new expansion comes out and we play a friendly spar, the first deck they always play is a Thief Priest. And I think he or she, or I'll just say for the sake of privacy, not the person's orientation, yada yada yada, I think for the sake of just the factor of Thief Priest decks love this card, just for the fact that it adds a card to the hand very early, and you can even use it very late as well if you see an opponent holding on a specific card and hopefully snatch up the card. It also gives you information about the opponent's hand and hopefully gives you information of the opponent's overall game plan so you know how to interact with it. Now, it's not as... mostly people brought the argument that it is like Chameleos, but there's a reason why Madame Lazul is a lot more powerful Camellios. Simply put, Camellios is a really bad top deck. Madame Lazul is not a bad top deck whatsoever. Presuming the opponent doesn't have an empty hand, of course. I think it's a pretty cool card, and I think it's one of those cards that I am going to give the little notch off to say it's amazing. It's a card that I think most priest decks that can put it in their deck will put it into their deck, just for the simple fact alone that it's just a really good turn free play. You can also play it late game without a sweat. It adds a card to your hand, it replaces itself, and I never met a priest player who does not have fun by at pyroblasting the opponent's face for lethal damage. In my personal opinion. Nevertheless, that's all the cards that have been revealed so far. With the big spoilers season coming up starting next week, what I'm going to try to do is try to make an update video on the cards that have been revealed on Wednesdays and on Saturdays. So those times in between when the cards get revealed and such, then I can just update the videos and such. Nevertheless, the videos might be shorter or longer depending on the values of the cards and all that stuff. So I apologize for the various rounds of length and it's not consistent. Still, I hope you enjoy them. I hope you enjoy seeing my 2 cents on these. I hope you all have a lovely day. This is LevDev, signing out.